The spit hit Lauren's cheek with a wet, deliberate sound that seemed to echo through the suddenly silent restaurant. For 3 seconds, the world stopped. The classical music continued playing from hidden speakers. The scent of expensive wine and truffle risotto hung in the air. But every conversation died. Every fork paused midway to mouths. Every eye turned toward the center of the dining room where Lauren Mitchell stood frozen, a tray of empty glasses trembling in her hands. Grace Adams lowered her phone, the camera still recording. Her lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her cold blue eyes. "Did you all see that?" She called out to her 3 friends at the table, her voice carrying that particular pitch of cruelty that only comes from a lifetime of never hearing the word no. I asked for sparkling water, and this poverty case brought me tap water. Tap. Water. She pronounced each word like an accusation. "Do you know who my father is?" Lauren's fingers tightened around the tray. She could feel it, the warm slide of saliva down her cheek, mixing with the tears that threatened to spill, but she refused to let fall. Not here. Not in front of them. "Miss Adams, Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. She hated how small it sounded. "You what?" Grace stood, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor. She was tall, blonde, perfect in the way that money makes people perfect. The kind of girl who'd never worked a day in her life, never felt the ache in her feet from a double shift, never counted coins to see if she could afford both dinner and heat for the week. "You're sorry?" Sorry doesn't fix incompetence. One of Grace's friends, a brunette in a dress that cost more than Lauren's entire month's rent, was laughing, her phone also out, recording from a different angle. "This is gold, Grace. Total gold. Your followers are going to die." Lauren stood there, the spit still wet on her face, and felt something inside her. Crack. Not break. Not yet. But crack. She'd been working at Bellissimo for 11 months. 11 months of smiling through condescension, of pretending she didn't notice how some customers looked through her like she was furniture, of saving every tip in a jar hidden in her apartment, because Marcus had found her bank account once, and she couldn't risk it again. The manager, a thin man named Vincent, who cared more about reputation than dignity, was hurrying over. She could see it in his face. He was going to apologize to Grace. He was going to ask Lauren to apologize, maybe even fire her, because that's what happened to people like her. They were expendable. "Miss Adams, please let me," Vincent began, his hands already raised in supplication. "No." The word cut through the restaurant like a blade. It came from the corner booth. The one that was always reserved but never listed in the reservation book. The booth where a man sat alone every Friday evening at exactly 7 o'clock, ordering the same meal, always leaving cash, never causing trouble. Lauren had served him exactly twice in 11 months. Both times he'd barely looked at her. Both times he'd left a tip that was more than her nightly wage. Both times she'd felt his eyes follow her across the room in a way that should have scared her but somehow didn't. Arnold Brown stood slowly, and the air pressure in the room seemed to change. He wasn't the tallest man Lauren had ever seen, but he carried himself like he owned every inch of space around him. Probably 6'1", broad-shouldered in a way that his perfectly tailored black suit somehow emphasized rather than hid. His dark hair was cut short, neat, professional. A well-groomed beard framed a jaw that looked like it had been carved from granite. But it was his eyes, dark brown, almost black in the restaurant's ambient lighting, that made Grace Adams take an involuntary step backward. He crossed the dining room in measured steps. His shoes, Italian, leather, polished to a mirror shine, made no sound on the marble. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Vincent had gone pale. "Mr. Brown, sir, there's no need for you to—" "Vincent." Arnold's voice was quiet, controlled, the kind of quiet that made you listen harder. Go to your office. But sir, now. Vincent fled. Arnold stopped directly in front of Lauren. Up close, she could see the fine details. The platinum watch on his wrist that probably cost more than her car had before it died. The small scar through his left eyebrow. The way his cologne smelled like cedar and something darker, more expensive. He was perhaps late 30s, she thought distantly. Lines around his eyes that spoke of stress, not laughter. He reached into his jacket pocket, and for a bizarre second Lauren wondered if this was how she died. Caught in the crossfire of something she didn't understand. But he pulled out a silk handkerchief, black with subtle embroidery along the edge. "May I?" he asked quietly, his eyes finally meeting hers. Lauren nodded because she couldn't speak. He lifted the handkerchief to her face and wiped Grace's spit away with a gentleness that made her chest ache. His movements were careful, almost clinical. But there was something in his expression, a tightness around his mouth, a muscle jumping in his jaw, that suggested he was holding back something volcanic. "Thank you," Lauren whispered. Arnold folded the handkerchief, the soiled side hidden, and tucked it back into his pocket. Then he turned to Grace Adams, and Lauren saw the girl's confidence crumble in real time. "Put the phone down," Arnold said. Grace's hand shook. Do you know who my father is?" "Robert Adams, state senator, 3 terms, currently under investigation for misuse of campaign funds, though that hasn't made the papers yet." Arnold's voice remained perfectly even. "I know exactly who your father is, Miss Adams. The question is, do you know who I am?" The color drained from Grace's face. "I didn't think so." Arnold took one step closer. Just one. But it was enough to make Grace stumble backward into her chair. "You're going to do 3 things. First, you're going to delete that video. Second, you're going to apologize, not to me, but to every staff member in this restaurant for creating a hostile work environment. And third, you're going to leave, and you're never going to come back to any establishment I frequent. Are we clear?" "My father." "Your father," Arnold interrupted softly, "will receive a very detailed report of tonight's events from my attorney, along with the video footage from the restaurant's security cameras. I wonder how that will play during his re-election campaign. Senator's daughter assault service worker. Has a certain ring to it, don't you think?" Grace's hands were shaking as she pulled up her phone and deleted the video. Her friends had already slunk toward the exit, abandoning her without a second glance. That's what people like that did, Lauren realized. They scattered the moment real power showed up. "I'm sorry," Grace mumbled toward the floor. "Louder," Arnold said, "and look at them when you speak. These people have names. Use them." Grace's apology came out strangled, barely coherent, but she managed to choke it out to Lauren, to the other servers who had gathered at a safe distance, to the kitchen staff who had emerged to witness the spectacle. Then she ran, her heels clicking frantically against the marble, as she fled into the Chicago night. The restaurant remained silent for another beat. Then, slowly, conversations resumed. Forks scraped against plates. Wine glasses were lifted. The world moved on, because the show was over. Arnold turned back to Lauren. "Your shift ends at 11? She blinked. Yes, but someone will be waiting outside to drive you home. The streets aren't safe this late. Mr. Brown, I can't accept." "It's not a request, Miss Mitchell." His eyes held hers, and she saw something in them that made her breath catch. Not threat. Something else. Something that looked almost like recognition. Like he'd seen her before tonight in ways that had nothing to do with serving him dinner. "Humor me." He returned to his table, picked up his coat, black cashmere that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe, and left through the front entrance. He hadn't finished his meal, hadn't paid his bill, though she knew somehow that Vincent would comp it anyway. Lauren stood in the middle of the dining room, Arnold Brown's gentleness still burning on her cheek where he'd touched her, and realized with creeping certainty that her life had just changed in ways she couldn't begin to understand. Welcome to Midnight Redemption, where second chances aren't just for the innocent. They're for the broken, the dangerous, and the ones brave enough to protect what matters most. If this story already has your heart racing, hit that like button, subscribe so you never miss a story. That'll make you believe even the coldest hearts can thaw, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We love hearing from you. Now, let's see how one moment of protection became something neither of them could walk away from. 4 hours later, Lauren pushed through the restaurant's back door into the freezing December night, her feet screaming in her cheap shoes, her uniform smelling like kitchen grease and other people's perfume. Her breath fogged in the air. She'd counted her. Tips 3 times during her break. $73. Not enough. Never enough. A black Mercedes idled at the curb, its engine purring softly. The back door opened, and a man in a dark suit stepped out. Not Arnold Brown, someone else. Younger, with a severe face and an earpiece that glinted in the streetlight. "Miss Mitchell," he said, his voice professionally neutral. "I'm here to take you home." Lauren's instinct was to run. Everything in her life had taught her that accepting help from powerful men came with a price she couldn't afford to pay. But it was 15 degrees outside, and the bus had stopped running an hour ago, and her apartment was 40 minutes away on foot through neighborhoods where girls like her disappeared. "Just home," she said quietly. "Nowhere else." "Just home," the man confirmed, holding the door open wider. She slid into the warm leather interior, and the door closed with an expensive, solid sound that sealed her inside a world that wasn't hers. The car pulled away from the curb, and through the tinted window, Lauren watched the restaurant disappear behind them, unaware that she'd never walk through those doors again, unaware that Arnold Brown had already made a decision that would reshape everything. She was his to protect now, and Arnold Brown always protected what was his. Lauren's apartment building looked worse in the Mercedes' headlights. Crumbling brick, broken steps, graffiti the landlord never covered. 4th floor, no elevator, heat that barely worked. The driver handed her a business card before she left. Heavy black cardstock with silver lettering, just a phone number. "Mr. Brown said to call if you need anything." Lauren took it because refusing felt dangerous, then hurried inside through the door that never locked properly. Marcus was sitting outside her apartment. He looked up as she reached the 4th floor landing and smiled. Not a nice smile. It never had been, she realized now with the clarity of 8 months' distance. "Hey, baby," he said, standing slowly. Tall, blonde, blue-eyed, once good-looking in a rough way, but drinking and whatever else he was into now had carved something meaner underneath. "Miss me?" "You need to leave, Marcus." Lauren's voice came out steadier than she felt. "I've been waiting 2 hours. Least you could do is invite me in." He smelled like beer and something chemical. "Saw something interesting tonight. You went viral for about 15 minutes. Rich bitch. Spitting on you. Must have been humiliating." Lauren's stomach dropped. But then some guy stepped in, cleaned your face real gentle. Marcus moved closer, blocking her door. Looked pretty intimate. It wasn't like that. He was being decent. Decent. His voice went quiet, and quiet was always worse than yelling. "You don't get to act like you're better than me because some rich asshole played hero. Marcus, please, I just want to go inside. Then invite me in. We'll talk. That's all." She'd heard that before. Just talk. Just 5 minutes. Just let me explain. It was never just anything. It always ended with her crying. apologizing for things that weren't her fault, promising to be better. But she'd learned something in the 8 months since she left. She was stronger than he'd made her believe. Not strong enough to not be afraid. She was terrified right now, but strong enough to stay afraid and still say no. "No," Lauren said. "Leave or I'm calling the police." "The police?" He laughed, and it echoed in the narrow hallway. "Baby, you know that's not going to end well for me. Is that what you want? See me arrested, lose my job, end up on the street? I want you to leave me alone." "I can't do that. You're mine, Lauren. You've always been mine." For a second, he almost looked sad, almost looked like the boy she'd met 3 years ago who'd seemed lost and lonely. "And I'm not letting some rich asshole take what's mine." Lauren's hand found her phone in her pocket. She was calculating. How fast could she dial? How long would it take for someone to come? The neighbors never called the cops when they heard fighting. "I'll go," Marcus said suddenly, raising his hands in mock surrender. "But I'll be back, Lauren. I'll always come back. Because you're going to realize eventually that nobody's going to love you like I do. Nobody's going to want you. You're going to realize you made a mistake, and you're going to come back to me. I always forgive you." He turned and walked down the stairs, his footsteps heavy and deliberate. Lauren waited until she heard the front door slam 4 floors down before she let herself breathe again. Her hands shook so badly it took 3 tries to get the key in the lock. She stumbled inside and locked the door, threw the deadbolt, checked it twice. Then she slid down to the floor with her back against the door and let the tears come. The apartment was freezing. She could see her breath in the air. The kitchen window was still, cracked from when Marcus had thrown something at it 4 months ago, covered with cardboard and duct tape, but the cold seeped through anyway. This was her life. This cramped, freezing space with someone else's furniture and walls so thin she could hear her neighbors arguing. This constant fear that Marcus would show up again, push harder next time. This exhaustion that lived in her bones, worked 12-hour shifts and still couldn't make rent without skipping meals. Lauren pulled out Arnold, Brown's business card, and stared at it. Heavy cardstock, expensive, call if you need anything. She needed everything. That was the problem. She needed to not be afraid. She needed to sleep without nightmares. She needed Marcus to stop existing in her life. But accepting help from powerful men came with a price. Always. Her mother had taught her that before the drugs finally took her when Lauren was 16. She'd learned to smile and refuse, and keep her head down and make herself small. Arnold, Brown hadn't made her feel small. That was the dangerous part. When he'd cleaned her face, when he'd stood between her and Grace Adams, she'd felt seen, protected, like she mattered. That feeling was more dangerous than Marcus showing up at her door. She was about to put the card away when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her thumb hit accept. "Miss Mitchell." Arnold Brown's voice was unmistakable, that controlled quietness that made her spine straighten automatically. "I apologize for calling so late. I wanted to ensure you arrived home safely." Yes, thank you. Your driver was very professional." "Good." A pause. She heard something in the background. Music? Then silence, like he'd moved somewhere private. "I also wanted to make you an offer." Lauren's stomach tightened. "Mr. Brown, if this is it's about employment," he interrupted smoothly. "I need a personal assistant. Someone to manage my schedule, handle correspondence, coordinate with my various business interests. The position comes with a substantial salary, benefits, and housing." "Housing?" "I have a guest house on my property. 2 bedrooms, fully furnished, private entrance. You'd have your own space." It sounded too good. Way too good. "Mr. Brown, I don't have experience as a personal assistant. I'm a waitress. You're a survivor, he corrected. You work double shifts without complaint. You maintain grace under pressure. You're intelligent, observant, and you don't panic easily. Those are the qualities I need. Why me? The question came out before she could stop it. There are thousands of qualified candidates. Why would you offer this to someone you don't even know? Another pause. Longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice had changed in some subtle way she couldn't name. Because tonight I watched someone try to humiliate you for being poor, and you stood there with your dignity intact. Because you didn't cry, didn't grovel, didn't shrink. And because I've been watching you for 11 months, Miss Mitchell, every Friday evening, and I've seen how you treat people. The old woman who tips in quarters. You spend extra time with her. The businessman who snaps his fingers. You serve him with the same courtesy. You're kind without being weak. That's rare. Lauren's breath caught. You've been watching me? I've been noticing you, Arnold corrected. There's a difference. And tonight, when I saw what happened, I realized I couldn't watch you go back to a job where people like Grace Adams can treat you as less than human. So I'm offering you an alternative. And what do you get out of this arrangement? A competent assistant, and the satisfaction of knowing that woman doesn't have power over you anymore. It sounded almost believable, almost reasonable. Except powerful men didn't do things for satisfaction alone. I can't, Lauren said quietly. I'm sorry, Mr. Brown. I appreciate the offer, but I can't accept it. May I ask why? Because I'm afraid. Because I don't trust kindness. Because every time someone's offered to help me, they've wanted something I couldn't afford to give. I don't know you, she said instead. And you don't know me. It's too much, too fast. Then take the weekend, Arnold said. Think about it. The offer will remain open until Monday evening. If you decide you'd prefer to return to Bellissimo, I'll respect that decision. But Miss Mitchell? Yes? The man who was waiting outside your apartment tonight. His voice had gone very quiet again, very controlled. That's Marcus Reeves, yes? Your ex-boyfriend? Lauren's blood went cold. How do you... I know a great many things. It's part of what I do. She heard something that might have been ice clinking in a glass. If he approaches you again, I want you to call me immediately. Do you understand? Mr. Brown. I'm not asking for permission, Miss Mitchell. I'm telling you what's going to happen. He's a problem. I solve problems. That's what I do. There was something in his voice that made her believe him. Something that suggested Marcus showing up at her door again would be a very different experience. Think about my offer, Arnold said. I'll have my driver check on your building periodically this weekend, for my own peace of mind. He hung up before she could respond. Lauren sat on her freezing apartment floor, staring at her phone, and wondered what the hell she'd just stumbled into. Wondered whether Arnold Brown was salvation or a different kind of danger. Outside, the Chicago wind howled against her cracked window. She looked at the business card again. Then she tucked it into her pocket, not her junk drawer, and told herself she'd think about it in the morning. But she already knew what her answer would be. She just wasn't sure if she was brave enough to say yes. The guest house was warm. That was Lauren's first thought when Thomas, Arnold's driver, opened the door Monday evening. Actual, penetrating warmth that reached her bones instead of hovering uselessly near broken radiators. The second thought, it was beautiful. Not fancy or intimidating. Just beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. Hardwood floors gleaming golden in soft lighting. A cream-colored couch with thick blankets draped over the back. A kitchen with appliances that looked less than a decade old. Windows with real curtains instead of bedsheets. Mr. Brown had it prepared for you, Thomas said, setting down her 2 suitcases. Everything she owned fit into 2 battered suitcases, Bedroom upstairs, second bedroom as well, if you have guests. Bathroom fully stocked, kitchen too. Lauren walked slowly through the space, touching things to make sure they were real. The couch was soft. The blankets were cashmere. The kitchen cabinets were full of food. Real food. Not ramen and canned soup. The refrigerator hummed quietly, stocked with fresh vegetables, milk, eggs, cheese. Washer and dryer in the closet, Thomas continued. Wi-Fi password on the counter. Mr. Brown asks that you take tonight to settle in. He'll meet with you tomorrow morning at 9 in the main house to discuss your duties. The main house, Lauren repeated, looking out the window. Through the darkness she could see it. A sprawling structure maybe 100 yards away, all stone and glass and subtle lighting. Thomas pulled out a key ring. These are yours. Front door, back door, and a key to the main house. Mr. Brown wants you to feel you have autonomy here. This is your home, Miss Mitchell, not a prison. The word choice was deliberate. Thank you, she said quietly, for everything. Thomas nodded once and left, and Lauren stood in the warm, beautiful guest house and tried not to cry. She'd said yes on Sunday afternoon, called the number with shaking hands, and told Arnold she'd accept his offer. He'd asked only one question. Did Marcus come back? When she said, no, he'd simply replied, good. Thomas will collect you Monday at 6. Bring everything important. You won't need to return. Now here she was, in a place that felt like a dream compared to her freezing 4th-floor apartment. She should have felt relieved, grateful, safe. Instead, she felt terrified, because the other shoe always dropped. Always. And the higher you climbed, the further you fell. The next morning, Lauren woke to sunlight streaming through real windows and actual heat. For 3 full seconds, she forgot where she was. Then memory returned. Arnold Brown, the offer, the guest house. She'd slept in a bed with clean sheets and a comforter that weighed enough to feel like a hug. The shower water had been hot instantly. The towels were thick and soft. It felt obscene somehow. All this comfort while most of the world struggled. She dressed in her best outfit, a simple black dress bought secondhand, her only pair of shoes that weren't falling apart, and walked to the main house at 8:55. The path was paved and cleared of snow. The morning was cold but beautiful, the kind of crisp December day that made Chicago look like a postcard. Thomas answered the door before she could knock. Miss Mitchell, right on time. Mr. Brown is in his study. First door on the left. The main house was exactly what she'd expected, expensive without being ostentatious. Dark wood, leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake, a fortress disguised as a home. She knocked on the study door. Come in. Arnold Brown sat behind a massive mahogany desk, reading something on his laptop. He looked up as she entered, and for a moment they just stared at each other. He looked different in morning light. Still intimidating, but more human somehow. The beard was neatly trimmed. His shirt was charcoal gray, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms marked with old scars she tried not to stare at. No jacket, no tie. Almost casual, except nothing about Arnold Brown would ever be truly casual. Miss Mitchell, he said, standing. Did you sleep well? Yes. Thank you. The guest house it's more than I expected. Good. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Please sit. Would you like coffee? I'm fine, thank you. He poured himself a cup from a carafe on the desk. Black, no sugar, and sat back down. Let's discuss your role here. For the next 30 minutes, Arnold outlined her responsibilities. Manage his calendar, which was complex and constantly shifting. Screen his calls and emails. Coordinate with his various business managers. He owned 3 restaurants, 2 construction companies, several commercial properties across Chicago. Handle correspondence. Occasionally accompany him to business dinners or meetings that required someone to take notes. It was legitimate work. Real work. Nothing he described sounded like a cover for something darker. "You'll have access to my schedule," Arnold continued, "but there will be blocks of time, marked private. You're not to schedule anything during those periods, and you're not to ask what I'm doing. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear." "Your salary is $80,000 annually, paid bi-weekly. Health insurance begins immediately. Use the guest house indefinitely as long as you're employed. When you leave, if you leave, 3 months severance and assistance finding other housing." 80,000. Lauren had made 22,000 last year working 60-hour weeks. "That's very generous," she managed. "It's fair," Arnold corrected. "You'll earn it. I'm not an easy man to work for." "I imagine not." Something that might have been amusement flickered in his dark eyes. "You'll also need appropriate professional attire. I've arranged for a stylist to meet with you this afternoon. She'll help you build a wardrobe suitable for business meetings and dinners. Everything will be charged to my account. Mr. Brown, I can't. You'll be representing me in professional settings. This is a business expense, not charity." His tone left no room for argument. "If it makes you feel better, consider it a uniform." Lauren bit back further protest. She was learning already. Arnold Brown made decisions, and those decisions weren't up for debate. "One more thing." He pulled a folder from his desk drawer and slid it across to her. "Marcus Reeves filed a police report yesterday, claiming you stole money from him before you left. $5,000. Lauren's blood ran cold. "That's not true. I know it's not true. He has no evidence because it didn't happen. But he's attempting to create a legal problem for you, probably hoping you'll contact him to resolve it." Arnold's expression didn't change, but something in his voice went very quiet. "I've retained an attorney for you. Her name is Sarah Chen, best defense attorney in Illinois. She's already filed a motion to dismiss based on lack of evidence and submitted a counterclaim for harassment." "I can't afford an attorney." "You're not being asked to afford anything. This is handled." He stood, signaling the meeting was over. "Marcus Reeves is no longer your problem, Miss Mitchell. He's mine, and I take care of my problems permanently." The way he said it made her stomach twist. "You don't have to—" "I'm not doing this for you," Arnold interrupted, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I'm doing this because men who terrorize women don't get to walk around my city, unpunished. There's a difference." He walked her to the door, and Lauren caught the scent of his cologne again, cedar and something darker, expensive, controlled. "Your first task," Arnold said, "is to confirm my dinner reservation at Kayla on Friday, 8 o'clock, party of 2, and cancel my afternoon meeting with the construction contractor. Reschedule for next week." "Understood." "Welcome aboard, Miss Mitchell." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her at the doorway. "Lauren." She looked back. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "You're safe here," he said quietly. "I need you to believe that." "I'm trying," she admitted. "Try harder." She left before he could see how much those words affected her. Walked back to the guest house with her arms wrapped around herself, not from cold, but from the strange ache in her chest. Arnold Brown was a dangerous man. She knew that. Could feel it in the way he moved, the way he spoke, the certainty that he could make people disappear if he wanted to. But when he'd said she was safe, she'd believed him. And that terrified her more than anything else. 3 weeks passed like a dream Lauren kept waiting to wake up from. She fell into the rhythm of Arnold's life with surprising ease. His schedule was complex, but predictable. Early mornings reviewing reports in his study, Afternoons split between his various businesses, evenings that disappeared into those private blocks she'd learned not to ask about. She coordinated his meetings, screened his calls, managed correspondence with restaurant suppliers and construction contractors. The work was demanding, but manageable. Arnold was exacting but fair, never raising his voice, never cruel. He simply expected competence and rewarded it with trust. The stylist had outfitted her with a professional wardrobe, tailored dresses, quality shoes, a wool coat that actually kept her warm. Lauren had stopped flinching every time she looked at price tags. This was her life now, somehow. Marcus hadn't contacted her again. Sarah Chen, the attorney, had called once to confirm that the false police report had been dismissed, and Marcus had been issued a restraining order. Mr. Brown was very thorough in his instructions, she'd said. Lauren didn't ask what that meant, but tonight was different. Tonight, Lauren stood in Arnold's study at 7 p.m, watching him button a different kind of shirt. Black, expensive fabric, but something in the cut suggested functionality over fashion. He was checking his watch, his jaw tight in a way she'd learned meant he was preparing for something unpleasant. "Cancel my morning meeting with the property developer," Arnold said without looking at her. "And tell Thomas I'll need the car at 6 a.m. "Of course." Lauren made a note on her tablet. "Is there anything else?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Do you ever wonder what I do during those private blocks on my calendar?" Lauren's fingers stilled on the screen. They'd never discussed this, never even danced around it. "It's not my business, Mr. Brown." "Arnold?" he corrected quietly. "When we're alone, you can call me Arnold." She looked up, surprised. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "I'm going to tell you something," Arnold continued, moving to the window that overlooked the dark expanse of his property. "And then you're going to make a choice about whether you want to continue working for me." Lauren's stomach dropped. "What kind of choice?" "The kind where you decide if you can live with who I really am." He turned back to face her, and in the low lighting of the study, his dark eyes looked almost black. "I told you I solve problems, Lauren. I wasn't being metaphorical." "I don't understand." "Yes, you do. You're too intelligent not to." He crossed his arms, leaning against the window frame. "The restaurants, the construction companies, the real estate, those are legitimate businesses, profitable, legal, completely above board. But they're also convenient covers for what I actually do. Which is? I run the Chicago Syndicate. Every criminal enterprise on the North Side answers to me. Protection, loan enforcement, territory disputes, negotiations with rival families. His voice remained perfectly calm, like he was describing a corporate structure rather than organized crime. I inherited it from my uncle when I was 26. I've spent the last 12 years building it into something that doesn't rely on violence unless absolutely necessary. But make no mistake, when violence is necessary, I don't hesitate." Lauren's hand tightened around her tablet. She should have been shocked, should have been afraid, but somehow she wasn't. Not really. She'd known. On some level, she'd known from the moment he'd made Grace Adams grovel, from the way people in his orbit moved around him like he was gravity itself. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked quietly. "Because you deserve to know who you're working for. Because I don't want you to find out accidentally and feel betrayed." He moved closer, and Lauren forced herself not to step back. "And because I'm about to ask you to do something that will tie you to this world whether you like it or not." "What are you asking?" "Tomorrow evening, I'm hosting a dinner party. 5 business associates and their wives. Officially, it's a social gathering. Unofficially, we'll be negotiating a treaty with the South Side, families to prevent a territory war." Arnold's eyes held hers. "I need you there, not as my assistant, as my date." Lauren blinked. Your date. These men are traditional. They trust men who have families, who have something to lose. A man who shows up alone looks unstable, ungrounded. A man who brings a woman he's clearly protective of, looks like someone with priorities beyond power. He paused. You don't have to do anything except look comfortable beside me. Smile when appropriate. Let them assume we're together. And if I say no, then I'll respect your decision, and you'll continue working here as my assistant. Nothing changes. His voice gentled slightly. But I'm asking you to say yes, Lauren, because I trust you, because you understand survival in ways these people never will, and because when they look at you, they'll see exactly what I want them to see, which is that I have something worth protecting. Arnold took another step closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne again. That I'm not just a calculating machine, that I'm capable of caring about someone more than I care about territory or profit. Lauren's heart was hammering against her ribs. Is that true? Do you care about someone more than territory or profit? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'm beginning to. The admission hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither of them was ready to explore. I'll do it, Lauren heard herself say. I'll go. To your dinner party. You're sure? No. She wasn't sure of anything. But she thought about Marcus, about Grace Adams, about every person in her life who'd tried to make her feel small. Arnold Brown had given her safety, stability, dignity. Maybe it was time to give him something back. I'm sure, she said. Something shifted in Arnold's expression. Relief, maybe, or gratitude, or something more complicated. Thank you. Arnold? She used his first name deliberately, testing how it felt. It felt dangerous. It felt right. What happens tonight, during this private block? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm going to visit Marcus Reeves. Make sure he understands what happens if he ever comes near you again. You said he had a restraining order. A piece of paper doesn't stop men like him. Fear does. Arnold moved toward the door, picking up a jacket from the back of his chair. I won't hurt him unless I have to, but I will make certain he understands the consequences of his choices. And what are the consequences? Arnold looked back at her, and in that moment, Lauren saw exactly what made him dangerous. Not rage, not cruelty, just absolute, unwavering certainty. That if he ever makes you afraid again, Arnold said quietly, he'll have a much bigger problem than a restraining order. He'll have me. He left, and Lauren stood alone in the study, her tablet still clutched in her hands, and tried to process what had just happened. She'd agreed to pretend to be Arnold Brown's girlfriend in front of the Chicago Mafia. She'd accepted that the man who'd saved her was also a criminal who solved problems with fear and violence. She'd looked into his dark eyes and hadn't run. What did that make her? Lauren walked back to the guest house through the cold December night, and for the first time since moving here, she didn't feel like a guest. She felt like someone who'd made a choice. Someone who'd stepped deliberately into a dangerous world, because staying in the safe one hadn't kept her safe at all. Someone who was starting to realize that Arnold Brown was right about one thing. Kindness without power was just pretty words. But power without kindness was tyranny. Maybe what they had was something in between. Maybe that was enough. She fell asleep that night thinking about tomorrow's dinner party, about standing beside Arnold in front of dangerous men, about what it would feel like to stop pretending to be something she wasn't. And for the first time in her life, Lauren Mitchell didn't dream about running. She dreamed about staying. The dress Arnold had delivered to the guest house that afternoon was simple but devastating. Deep emerald silk that made her auburn hair look like fire, cut to suggest rather than reveal, expensive enough that Lauren was afraid to breathe too hard in it. The stylist had returned to fix her hair and makeup. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make her look like she belonged in Arnold's world instead of serving drinks in it. Now she stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom, barely recognizing herself. "You look beautiful," a voice said from the doorway. Lauren turned. Arnold stood there in a black suit that probably cost more than her old car, his dark eyes moving over her with an intensity that made her skin warm. "You clean up nice yourself," she managed. He smiled, a real smile, rare and brief. "Are you nervous?" "Terrified." "Good. That means you're paying attention." He crossed the room and held out his hand. "Ready?" Lauren took his hand, and they walked together to the main house. The dining room had been transformed. Crystal and candlelight. 5 couples already seated, their conversations dying as Arnold entered with Lauren on his arm. These were dangerous people. Lauren could feel it in the way they watched, in the calculation behind their smiles. The men wore expensive suits. The women wore diamonds and boredom in equal measure. Arnold guided her to the head of the table, his hand, warm and steady, on the small of her back. "Everyone, this is Lauren Mitchell. Lauren, this is my inner circle." He didn't elaborate, didn't explain who she was or why she was there, just seated her beside him and let them draw their own conclusions. Dinner began. The first hour passed in a blur of polite conversation and excellent food. Lauren smiled when appropriate, laughed at the right moments, let Arnold's hand rest possessively on her thigh under the table. She could feel the other women, watching her, trying to figure out if she was real or another in a long line of temporary companions. Then, the men began talking business. "The South Side families are getting bold," one man said. "Vincent Russo," Arnold had whispered, second in command. "They took one of our supply routes last week. Cost us $60,000. They're testing boundaries," another added. Arnold's hand tightened slightly on Lauren's thigh. A warning or reassurance, she wasn't sure. "Let them test. We respond with strategy, not emotion." "With all due respect, Arnold, strategy looks like weakness if we don't show teeth." This from a younger man, mid-30s, with cold blue eyes. "My father would have already sent a message." "Your father," Arnold said quietly, "started 3 wars in 5 years and lost half our territory. Forgive me if I don't follow his playbook." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Lauren felt Arnold's control like a physical thing, the way he held himself perfectly still, the way his voice never rose, the way every man at that table understood that questioning him was dangerous even when he allowed it. "Michael has a point," Russo said carefully. "The South Side needs to understand we're not negotiating from weakness." "Then we'll show them strength," Arnold replied, "but not the kind they're expecting. We're going to offer them something they want more than territory." "Which is?" "Partnership on the waterfront development, legitimate money, legal profits, a way out of the war for both sides." Arnold leaned back in his chair, his hand still resting on Lauren's leg. "Wars are expensive. Peace is profitable. They'll take the deal. And if they don't, then we'll revisit our options." His voice gentled the threat, but it was there, clear and unmistakable. The conversation moved on, but Lauren barely heard it. She was too focused on the man beside her. The way he navigated these dangerous waters with the same calm control he brought to everything else. How he commanded without dominating, threatened without shouting. "What do you think, Lauren?" She blinked. Vincent Russo was watching her with interest. "I'm sorry?" "About the waterfront development. Arnold says you're his new assistant. Surely you've reviewed the proposals." It was a test. Lauren could feel every eye on her, waiting to see if she'd panic or defer to Arnold. I think, she said carefully, that anyone who chooses continued violence over profitable peace is either stupid or desperate. The South Side families aren't stupid, so they must be desperate, which means they'll take the deal if the terms are fair. Silence. Then Russo laughed. Genuine amusement. She's smart, Arnold. Where'd you find her? She found me, Arnold said, and his hand squeezed her thigh once. Approval. The dinner ended around midnight. The couples departed in expensive cars, leaving Lauren and Arnold alone in the now quiet dining room. You did well, Arnold said, loosening his tie. Better than well. Vincent will tell everyone you're not just decoration. That matters. Is that what I am? Not decoration? He turned to face her fully, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. You're the most real thing in my life, Lauren. Everything else is performance. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. Arnold looked at it, and his expression went cold. What is it? Marcus Reeves was released from custody 3 hours ago. The restraining order wasn't enough. He posted bail on an unrelated charge. Arnold's jaw tightened. Thomas just reported he was seen near the property line. Lauren's blood turned to ice. Here? Not anymore. Thomas escorted him away with extreme prejudice. Arnold's voice had gone very quiet again. That dangerous quiet. But this ends tonight. What are you going to do? What I should have done the first time. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Bring the car around. Yes, now. Arnold. Stay here. Lock the doors. I'll be back before morning. Let me come with you. He looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Absolutely not. He's my problem, Lauren said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. I'm tired of hiding from him. I'm tired of being afraid. Lauren, what I'm about to do, I know what you're about to do. I'm not stupid. She moved closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from him. I'm not asking to participate. I'm asking to witness, to see with my own eyes that he can't hurt me anymore. Arnold stared at her for a long moment. Then, you'll stay in the car. You won't get out. You won't interfere. Agreed? Agreed. And if you change your mind, I won't. Something in her voice must have convinced him, because he nodded once and took her hand. They drove in silence through the dark Chicago streets, Thomas at the wheel. Arnold's hand never left hers, his thumb tracing absent circles on her palm. Marcus's apartment was in a run-down building on the south side, the kind of place where people minded their own business because asking questions was dangerous. Wait here, Arnold said, squeezing her hand once before he got out. Thomas stayed with the car. 2 other men, Lauren hadn't even noticed them following, materialized from a second vehicle. Through the car window, Lauren watched Arnold and his men disappear into the building. 20 minutes passed. 20 minutes where Lauren's imagination ran wild with every possible scenario. Then the door opened, and Arnold walked out alone. His knuckles were red. His suit jacket was gone. But his expression was calm, almost peaceful. He slid back into the car and pulled Lauren against him without a word. Is he... she started. Alive, Arnold said quietly. Broken, but alive. He won't be bothering you again. Or anyone else. He's leaving Chicago tonight. If he ever comes back, he won't leave again. Lauren should have been horrified. Should have demanded details. Should have felt guilt or shock or something other than this overwhelming relief. Instead, she buried her face in Arnold's chest and let herself cry. It's over, Arnold murmured into her hair. I promise you, Lauren. It's over. And for the first time in 3 years, she believed it. The next 2 weeks, something shifted between them. Arnold stopped calling her Miss Mitchell entirely. She stopped knocking before entering his study. They fell into an easy rhythm that looked less like employer-employee and more like something neither of them wanted to name. She'd catch him watching her sometimes, not calculating, not analyzing, just watching with an expression that made her stomach flutter. He'd find excuses to touch her. A hand on her lower back as they walked, fingers brushing hers when passing documents. Nothing overt, nothing that crossed lines, but everything that suggested lines were becoming irrelevant. Lauren told herself it was dangerous, told herself she was confusing gratitude with something deeper, told herself that falling for Arnold Brown would be the stupidest thing she'd ever done. Then she'd catch sight of him reading in his study late at night, or hear him laugh at something Thomas said, or watch him carefully arrange flowers in the main house because he'd noticed she liked them, and she'd realize it was already too late. She was falling, had already fallen. It was a Wednesday evening in early January when everything came crashing down. Lauren was in Arnold's study, reviewing the quarterly reports from his restaurants, when the door burst open. A man she'd never seen before stood there, older, maybe 60, with silver hair and a face that suggested he smiled rarely. 2 armed guards flanked him. Arnold rose slowly from behind his desk. "Robert, I wasn't expecting you." Clearly. Senator Robert Adams, Grace's father, stepped into the study uninvited. His eyes landed on Lauren, and recognition flickered across his face. You're the waitress. The one my daughter had that unfortunate incident with." Lauren's mouth went dry. "Miss Mitchell works for me now," Arnold said, his voice dangerously quiet. "She's under my protection. I thought I made that clear." "You made a lot of things clear, Arnold." Robert Adams pulled out his phone and held up a photo. Lauren's stomach dropped. It was from the dinner party. Her and Arnold, his hand possessive on her back, both of them looking at each other with an intimacy that couldn't be faked. "My daughter is many things, but vindictive she is not. However I am, you humiliated her publicly, you threatened my family. That has consequences. Get to the point, Robert. The point is simple. You've been conducting business on the North Side with the implicit understanding that you stay out of politics. That agreement ends if you continue your relationship with this woman." "I don't take relationship advice from you," Arnold said coldly. "Not advice, an ultimatum." Robert Adams moved closer to the desk. "End whatever this is with the waitress, or I'll make sure every federal agency in Illinois starts looking very closely at your businesses. All of them. The restaurants, the construction companies, the real estate ventures. I'll bury you in investigations until you can't breathe." "You don't have that kind of power." "Don't I? I've been a senator for 12 years, Arnold. I have friends in every agency that matters, and they all owe me favors." His smile was cold. "Choose, the woman or your empire." Lauren felt Arnold's fury, like a physical force, but his voice remained controlled. "Get out of my house. You have 48 hours to make your decision." Robert Adams turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Arnold, my daughter tells me you made her feel small, made her feel powerless. I thought you should know how that feels." He left, his guards following. The silence that followed was suffocating. "Arnold," Lauren started. "Don't." He held up a hand, his back to her, staring out the window. "Just don't. We both know what you have to do. Do we? Your businesses are legitimate. They employ hundreds of people. You can't risk all of that for what?" Arnold turned to face her, and the raw emotion in his expression made her chest ache. "For you? Is that what you were going to say?" "It's not the same," Lauren said quietly. "Those businesses matter. The people who work for them matter. And you don't? Not more than all of them combined." She forced herself to meet his eyes. I won't be the reason you lose everything you've built. You don't get to make that choice, Lauren. Neither do you. Not this time. She stood, her legs shaking. I'll resign. Tonight. I'll move out. Find another apartment somewhere far enough away that it can't be connected to you. Robert Adams wins, but at least he leaves you alone. No. Arnold. I said no. He crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed her shoulders, not hard but firm enough to make her look at him. Do you really think I'm going to let that bastard dictate my life? Tell me who I can protect. Who I can... He stopped, jaw tight, like he'd almost said something he couldn't take back. Who you can what? Lauren whispered. Who I can love, Arnold said roughly. Because that's what this is, Lauren. That's what you are to me. And I'll be damned if I let Robert Adams or anyone else take that away. Lauren's breath caught. You don't mean that. Don't tell me what I mean. His hands tightened on her shoulders. Do you think I bring women here? Do you think I let anyone into my life the way I've let you in? I've spent 12 years keeping everyone at arm's length because attachment is weakness. And then you walked into my restaurant with your dignity intact and your refusal to be broken. And you made me remember what it feels like to want something more than power. But your businesses will survive. I've been preparing for something like this for years. The restaurants can be sold to Vincent. The construction, companies can be restructured. The real estate can be liquidated if necessary. His eyes searched hers desperately. None of it matters if you're not here. You're being irrational. For the first time in my life, yes. Arnold pulled her closer, close enough that she could feel his heartbeat. I'm choosing you, Lauren. Over the empire, over the businesses, over everything. Because power without you is just an empty mansion and cold dinners alone. Tears were streaming down her face now. What if this is a mistake? What if I'm not worth it? You are worth everything, Arnold said fiercely, and I'm going to prove it to you. He kissed her then, not gentle, not tentative, but with the kind of desperate certainty that came from a man who'd made a choice and refused to regret it. When they finally broke apart, Lauren was trembling. We fight him, Arnold said quietly, his forehead pressed to hers. Together. Robert Adams thinks he has power over me because he has political connections, but he's forgotten that I have something much more dangerous. Which is? The truth about every dirty deal he's made, every bribe he's taken, every lie he's told to get elected. Arnold's smile was cold. I've been collecting insurance on people like him for years. It's time to use it. That's blackmail. Yes. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. Are you going to ask me not to do it? Lauren thought about Grace Adams spitting in her face, about Robert Adams threatening to destroy Arnold's life, about all the powerful people who'd spent years making people like her feel small. No, she said quietly. I'm going to help you do it. Arnold's expression softened. You don't have to. Yes, I do, because you were right. Kindness without power is just pretty words, and I'm tired of pretty words. She took his hand, threading her fingers through his. Let's show him what happens when he underestimates people who've learned to fight back. Arnold pulled her close again, and Lauren felt the last of her resistance crumble. This was dangerous. This was insane. This was going to change everything. But maybe that was exactly what she needed. The press conference happened 3 days later. Sarah Chen, the defense attorney Arnold had retained for Lauren, stood at a podium in downtown Chicago, surrounded by reporters and cameras. Beside her stood Arnold, Lauren, and a woman in her 50s that Lauren had never met before. My name is Sarah Chen, the attorney began, her voice cutting through the murmur of the crowd. "I'm here today to discuss allegations of corruption, sexual harassment, and abuse of power by Illinois State Senator Robert Adams." The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Sarah raised her hand for silence. 3 years ago, Senator Adams engaged in an inappropriate relationship with a 23-year-old intern. When she refused to continue the relationship, he threatened to destroy her career. She quit politics entirely and has spent the last 3 years afraid to come forward. She gestured to the woman beside her, the one Lauren didn't know. "This is Margaret Torres. She's prepared to testify to these events under oath. We have emails, text messages, and corroborating witnesses." Robert Adams's career imploded in less than 48 hours. The investigation Sarah had threatened became reality, but it turned against the senator instead of Arnold. More women came forward. Business partners revealed bribes. Political allies distanced themselves. Grace Adams posted a tearful video claiming she'd been manipulated by her father into attacking Lauren. Within a week, Robert Adams had resigned in disgrace. Grace issued a public apology to Lauren, scripted, clearly, but genuine enough. They'd never be friends, but the active hostility was gone. Arnold's businesses remained untouched, thriving even, as the scandal brought new attention to his legitimate enterprises. It was a cold February evening when Lauren found Arnold in his study, staring at a photograph she'd never seen before. "Who is she?" Lauren asked softly, moving to stand beside him. Arnold was quiet for a long moment. Then, "My mother. Her name was Elena." The photograph showed a young woman in her 30s, dark hair pulled back, wearing a simple uniform. She was beautiful in a tired sort of way. Familiar somehow. "Elena Mitchell," Arnold continued. "She worked as a domestic servant for the Castellano family. Old money, north, shore elite. She died when I was 8. Lauren's heart stopped. "Mitchell, that's my last name." "I know." Arnold set the photograph down carefully. "I noticed it the first time you served me at Bellissimo. I told myself it was coincidence, that plenty of people have that last name. But then I watched you work. The way you moved through that restaurant with grace even when people treated you like you were invisible. The way you prioritized dignity over survival. And I saw her. I saw my mother. In you. Is that why you helped me?" Lauren's voice was barely a whisper. "Because I reminded you of her." "At first, yes." Arnold turned to face her fully. "The night Grace Adams spit on you, I saw my mother again. Saw her coming home crying after the Castellanos humiliated her. Saw her trying to hide the bruises when their eldest son decided she was his property. Saw her die because she didn't matter to people with power." Tears were streaming down Lauren's face. "Arnold." "She was strong, Lauren. Just like you. She survived things that should have broken her. And I was 8 years old, watching it happen, completely powerless to stop it." His voice cracked. "She made me promise something before she died. Made me swear that I'd never let anyone make people like her feel small again. That if I ever had power, I'd use it to protect instead of hurt. That's why you built your empire," Lauren realized. "Not for money or status, for power to keep that promise." "Yes. And for 12 years, I kept it by staying distant, by making decisions without attachment, by being fair but never soft." Arnold reached out and cupped her face in his hands. "And then you walked into my life, and everything changed. Because protecting you wasn't just about honoring my mother's memory. It was about you. About how you make me want to be more than the sum of my worst choices." "I love you," Lauren said. The words came out simple, true, inevitable. "I love you, and I'm terrified that I'm not." "Enough." "You're everything," Arnold whispered. "You're the reason I wake up in the morning wanting to be better, You're the reason that empty mansion became a home. You're the reason I know my mother would be proud of who I've become." He kissed her then, soft and deep, like a promise being sealed. 6 months later, Lauren stood in the guest house, her home now, officially, permanently, and looked at the photograph Arnold had given her. Elena Mitchell smiled back at her from 1995, forever. Young, forever tired, forever strong. "I'll take care of him," Lauren whispered to the photograph. "I promise." A knock on the door. Arnold stood there, holding a small velvet box. "I wasn't going to do this tonight," he said, stepping inside. "I had a whole plan. Romantic dinner. Perfect timing. The right words." "What changed?" "I realize there's never a perfect time. There's just now." He opened the box, revealing a simple diamond ring. "I'm not good at pretty speeches, Lauren, but I'm good at keeping promises. And I'm asking you to let me spend the rest of my life keeping the promise I made to my mother. That people like you, people with dignity and strength and hearts big enough to forgive even broken men, never feel small again." Lauren's hands were shaking as she held them out. "Yes." Arnold slipped the ring onto her finger, pulled her close, and Lauren felt the last piece of her old life fall away. She wasn't the waitress anymore. Wasn't the woman who counted coins or feared ex-boyfriends or wondered if she'd ever be worth protecting. She was Lauren Mitchell, soon to be Lauren Brown, and she'd found home in the most unexpected place. In the arms of a dangerous man who'd learned that the strongest thing he'd ever do was kneel down to her level and say, "You're safe now. You're loved. You're enough." Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places, from a man the world calls dangerous, from a moment where someone decides you're worth fighting for, from the realization that love isn't about perfect people. It's about broken people choosing to be better together. Arnold Brown had spent 12 years honoring his mother's memory through power and distance. Lauren Mitchell had spent her life believing she wasn't worth saving. Together, they learned that redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about choosing a different future. The empire stood. The restaurants thrived. The guest house became their home, filled with laughter and warmth and the sound of footsteps running through rooms that had been empty too long. And every Friday evening, Arnold and Lauren visited Elena Mitchell's grave together, bringing flowers and stories about the life they were building, the life she'd died believing was impossible for people like her. "She'd be proud of you," Lauren always said. "She'd be proud of us," Arnold always corrected. Because that's what they were now, not broken pieces trying to survive alone, but a family built from second chances, fierce protection, and the revolutionary idea that everyone, even waitresses who get spit on, even mafia bosses with blood on their hands, deserves to be loved exactly as they are. If this story reminded you that redemption is always possible, that love can come from unexpected places, and that standing up for someone can change 2 lives forever, we'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Hit like to support more stories about second chances and fierce protection. And subscribe to Midnight Redemption. We bring you new emotional journeys every single day. Before you go, check out the next video, or explore our playlist for more tales of powerful men learning that real strength isn't about control. It's about choosing to be gentle with the people who matter most. Thank you for being here. Good night, and remember, even in the darkest places, light finds a way in. Every single time.